Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Norwich Talk for number 32 of our podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Mr. Stuart Hodge, who has prepped a joke already about my England top. So, do you want to just get that off your chest?
No, it's not really a joke, right? I'm no Billy Connolly, but I saw you were wearing that, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is clearly just an attempt to wind me up from the start.
Has it worked?
Right, so yeah, it has. So I'm going to antagonise you now for the duration of the pod.
I very much look forward to that. Right, we're going to be going over the very controversial question that is, should Norwich City sack Daniel Farke? Now, I very much believe that we are both pro Farke. Am I right?
You make it sound like are you pro-Trump?
Well, we'll get political but in Norwich City terms.
Yes, we'll get to the kind of bigger question later, but Daniel Farke has done wonderful things for Norwich City Football Club. He's given us one of the best seasons in the club's history, definitely in the second tier. Last season cannot be forgotten. It's brilliant. But there's been a lot wrong this season, and there's lots of stuff where you can point and you can say, right, like, does the blame lie with like the recruitment on the Weber side? Does it lie with Daniel Farke? But there's been a lot of things that keep happening that we should have cut out mistakes-wise. You think of set pieces, you think of certain players who haven't been used, and then we saw in the game the other night that when you bring some of the faces from last season back, there's just a familiarity and cohesion amongst the players. So, yeah, I think it's worth a pod saying, where do we stand on this? So, yeah, I'm pro Farke. I'm a great admirer of what he's done for Norwich City, but I think we're right to be asking questions at this point.
I think cohesion's a key word that we'll explore a little bit later on. But in terms of the structure of this podcast, we're going to look at the 17-18 and 18-19 season as a collective, because I see that as like a two-part one series, whatever you want to call it. And then we'll look at this season as a whole in the second half of the podcast. So I want to cast your mind back probably about 3 years now to when Daniel Farke was appointed following Alan Irvine's dismissal or him leaving the club in general. This is a fairly broad question, and I'm going to be testing your knowledge here, but what were you expecting when he came into the club? What was the expectation? Because the club was on its haunches, wasn't it?
Right, so it was a very kind of transition sort of base period. So what you've got to remember is, now Alan I actually know, or got to know not too bad, because that was the season I was doing the commentary for Norwich City. So Alan's a great guy. Alan was someone who has been involved in football at the top level so long, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying he's not someone that needs to be in football for the money. If Alan's going to do a job, then it's going to be on the basis that it's a job that he's invested in emotionally and wants to be doing. So he left Norwich City because of that. There's also the transition. Stuart Weber came in. So the whole structure at Norwich City completely changed. Now, a lot of people are tied in to this thing, and Norwich City fans are coming to, even some of the sort of older generation are beginning to appreciate the kind of modern football structure. Now in Europe, it's been the case for years where you've got a head coach and a sporting director. A sporting director oversees the whole structure of the club, from youth level upwards, the infrastructure of the entire operation financially, in terms of the players, in terms of the assets, all of that. And the head coach is the guy that manages the training, the day-to-day, the team, the tactics, all of that kind of stuff, the dressing room atmosphere. When Norwich City brought in Stuart Weber, it was quite clear that we were going to transition to this model. And Weber actually went back to a well that he knew pretty well. I didn't mean that, by the way. But he went back to... So when he was the main man at Huddersfield, he brought in David Wagner. And he was previously the coach of Borussia Dortmund to Borussia Dortmund's B team. And so he did the same with Daniel Farke. Went for the guy that was in charge of Borussia Dortmund's B team, brought him over. Very different style of managers. And in a conversation with Stuart, I actually pointed out how it was one of the reasons Huddersfield were so successful was not necessarily because their squad was more Premier League ready. It probably wasn't. It was just David Wagner's style of football was more pragmatic and more easy to translate to the Premier League than the Farke ball that everyone loves to talk about.
Yeah.
But I actually did an interview with the EDP with Borussia Dortmund 2's equivalent of Stuart Weber, a guy called Ingo Preuss, that I published back then. So I probably had as much idea of anyone at that point of what to expect with Daniel Farke. And Ingo explained to me a lot of Daniel's strengths as a manager. He says he was really good at someone that was really good at getting fitness into the players, getting his tactical ideas across to a team and transmitting what he saw in his head onto the pitch. And I think Norwich City fans will totally agree that although it took time for fans to adapt to that sort of culture and style, and I can remember being in Carrow Road umpteen times and kick it forward and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just thinking, and it was frustrating me. And I wrote like a few pieces for the EDP just saying, oh my goodness, can people not appreciate something is happening here which is different from what has gone before? So in that first season that you're talking about, there was impatience. And I can remember, I think it was a game against Preston when Alex Neil came back, and Alex Tetty played a pass back to the goalkeeper to recycle it, keep the thing moving, and everyone booed him.
Yeah.
And I wrote a thing off the back of that because I was absolutely raging. I thought, why are you booing one of our own, one of our most loyal, dedicated? I mean, he's a legend, Alex Tetty, right? For umpteen reasons, and they're booing him for that. And I just thought, right, there has to be a change. There has to be an appreciation. So that first period, that's what that was like for me, Ben. That was the period where everyone's like, what is happening here? It's a culture change. It's a sea change. But you asked what to expect from Farke. I went on what Ingo Prowse told me. He told me he was someone that was good at transmitting tactical ideas. He told me his style was different from David Wagner, that it tended to be more adventurous, more about keeping the ball. And on the fitness side of things, one of the things in the first season that took the players quite a bit of time to adapt to was there was a lot of triple sessions. And one of the reasons in the season that followed that we got all of these late victories and points, I don't think were dramatic necessarily. A lot of people attributed to tactical switches, substitution, stuff like that. It was those triple sessions in the first year that got the fitness in the legs, that got these players to a level of fitness that was above the championship standard. And I think doing that in the first season, that was the transition season where that happened, and then we moved forward into that. I managed to make that answer really long, but I hope that gave you a bit of an idea where it sort of stands.
Well, that's why I got you on, Stuart, for just that sort of analysis, which is perfect for this. What do we actually make in terms of, we'll look at on the pitch to begin with, what do we make of the implication of this new style that Daniel Farke brought? Because I remember being sat in the River End, of all places to be sat during that time. I remember being sat there against Sunderland, which was his first home league game for Norwich. And I remember watching players like Marcel Franke get the ball, turn around, kick it back to Angus Gunn. Was there any point where you doubted yourself or doubted Daniel Farke in terms of could he make this change, or was it always, just give him time from your perspective?
That point came later. I think in the first season, my main thing that I would have pointed to, I would have said, where would we be without James Maddison?
Yeah.
Right? You looked at chances created, goals, assists, and you think, take them out the team, we're fighting relegation probably, or we're definitely looking over our shoulder.
Yeah.
So that was the main thing in the first season. I thought there was a massive over-reliance on him. But I think it was one of those it benefited both parties, because got a club record fee, championship record fee, for a player that had never played in the Premier League with James Maddison, and that was because we sort of sung to his tune, as it were, a wee bit. But no, I never doubted it. I thought you've got to give this a chance. And unless you're in danger of falling out of the championship in that first season, you've got to give it a chance. You've got to give it time. I also never doubted that he was going to get time unless it went catastrophically wrong and we were like near the foot of the table, because Stuart Webber's not a person that's going to panic. And I think he'd proven that before. So, yeah, I always thought there was going to be time, and it would eventually there would come a point where it would either succeed or it didn't. And I mean, obviously it transpired the way it did.
It certainly did, yeah. What was your opinion, or what is your opinion on Daniel Farke's first real challenge at Norwich, which was Nelson Oliveira, which was, I remember against Fulham, the first thing he does is score, whip his shirt off, stick it in front of Daniel Farke, and then what that led to was 6 months of isolation for Oliveira, wasn't it? What did you make of him dealing with that situation? Because it was, fairly hot water to be thrown into, fairly deep water as well. What did you make of him dealing with that situation? Do you think he did it well?
No player's bigger than the club.
Oh, yeah.
Ask Alex Ferguson. Alex Ferguson did it on multiple occasions, got rid of Yapstam, got rid of Ruud van Nistelrooy, got rid of Roy Keane, all at periods where they were great players. They on the field could have been great for Manchester United, but if there's one bad apple, then you need to take it. You need to get rid of it. I was going to use some sort of food metaphor there and then thought better of it. But you need to get rid of that for the dressing room. And that was the case with Nelson. Nelson was a wonderfully talented footballer, and one of the more talented frontmen that Norwich City have had in modern times, Nelson Oliveira. I thought he could shoot really well with both feet. His movement was really intelligent, really strong, good poise, good touch. But he was a player that I think, resented some of the stuff that Daniel Farke, but maybe, I don't know if it was the fitness stuff, but there were things, you could tell it grated with him, and you could tell he thought that that the manager wasn't giving him what he expected to be given as a player of his stature, a player of his quality. And I think Daniel Farke did what any manager has to do, which is right. And I mean, we were talking off air about sort of playing Football Manager. Someone doesn't agree with Stuart Hodge in the dressing room, he quickly gets rid of them as quick as possible. Straight in the B team, and then we arrange a move for you. And I mean, essentially that's what Norwich City had to do. They had to get rid of that. But I think that was a thing that was clear throughout a lot of sort of the early kind of Daniel Farke period, was this is a time of change. And a lot of the old guard, just they'd had what had gone before, and it didn't sit well with them, a lot of it. And I think that was the transition. It was very much a transition season, and it was a successful transition in the end. But that transition did carry over into the start of the title-winning campaign as well.
You've led me on beautifully there to the title-winning campaign. I want to move on to that now, because I want to keep the relevance of the 17-18 season sort of poignant in our minds, but I want to move on to 18-19. Now, I want to get your opinion on an opinion of mine, which is the main improvement from Daniel Farke for me was his player development. And, I mean, obviously tactics as well, but you look at players like Mario Vrancic, Marco Stiepermann, Ono Hernandez to an extent, Jamal Lewis, I think they're the best examples, Zimmerman, Tribal, they were all players who were brought in the season before, and then we saw the fruits of them signings the following season. Do you think that was good coaching, everything falling into place? What do you put that down to for that season?
That's a good question. Player development's an interesting one, because that's one of the ones that sits between your sort of head coach and your sporting director. Your sporting director is someone that brings someone in because they see potential. Yeah. And you think, the value we've created out of the academy, with the Max Sarans and stuff. Ben Godfrey was obviously brought in from York City, but over time, sort of nurtured at Norwich City, that kind of thing. And player development's a really interesting one, but I think there was just something clicked. I think in any historic campaign, sometimes it's intangible factors which can make the difference, and those can be quite hard to quantify. And I think if you look at the team during the title-winning season, it was very much structured. We actually saw a return to it the other night, that it was players that we knew well, that had been there for a while. We weren't sort of just throwing Duda and Rupp in for the sake of it. Mm-hmm. And so that's probably a bit unfair. Obviously, the manager's thinking that they can do a job, but the familiarity showed. And I think that familiarity was fostered during those early weeks of the season, of the title-winning campaign, where Norwich City struggled. Norwich City were really struggling. I went on the Talk Norwich City podcast after we'd been beaten 3-2 at home by Leeds. And they were very much, Sorry, and I was just thinking, it was Jack and Chris were basically saying, look, is it time for this guy to go? And kind of, I'm sort of sitting on the spot, trying to be sort of kind of professional journalist, right? Keep a level head, but obviously you've got the yellow and green sort of frustration boiling there as well. Yeah. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, I turned into Charles Nicholas. I was just sitting there thinking to myself, Jeff. They asked the questions, and I said, look, I can understand this level of frustration. It seems like we haven't moved on from last year. And I reckoned at that point, I don't know if I put a number on it in the podcast, I'd need to listen back, but I thought we were a couple of home defeats away from, right, this is getting into the territory where a change might need to be made. Yeah. But something clicked. It's a shame you didn't get me on a few weeks ago or just before Project Restart, or I might have been the catalyst again for some great Norwich City renaissance under Farke. But I think it was just something after that game. It seemed to be that all of the endemic flaws, Norwich City have never been able to defend set pieces from the moment I became really deeply involved watching every one of the club's games. Mm-hmm. It's just been something that we've struggled with for years and years. Yeah. But that season, it just seemed to be that if we did concede a goal from a set piece, we would score within 10 minutes at the other end, or it would be when we were 3-0 up anyway, and it just all seemed to come together. And I think you make a really good point. I think the fitness that I mentioned before, I think the fruition of that was sort of seen in the second season. And I think experience, familiarity between players, player development as a unit and player development individually. Tory politician with the hands here. But I think that kind of combination of factors all sort of came together. But another key factor for me, my favourite team of all time, in terms of the way it was constructed, is Manchester United's treble-winning team of 1998-99. It's because I think it's the most perfectly balanced football team of all time in every way. Right, you'd one really speedy winger, one that had the best right foot in the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? On one side, like, it was just the cohesion and the way all the parts worked together was just perfect.
Yeah.
And Norwich City, last season, that was true from like sort of week 6, 7 in. It was just everything seemed to work seamlessly. And even games where we didn't pick up the 3 points, it was like we'd snatched a late draw through fight, through grit, or we'd played really well and maybe not got the points we deserved, but we were playing well every week, so it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I think even when we didn't play so well, we were doing that thing where we were grinding out results as well. And all of those factors conspiring together, that's credit to the management team. It's credit to a structure within the club, and it's credit to the work that Daniel Farke had done. And I think finally the penny had begun to drop at Carrow Road as well. We weren't getting as many sort of grunts of like, oh, just kick it forward, or sort of humphs and haws and stuff when the ball was getting passed back. People were beginning to appreciate that this is a new style we're evolving here. Mm-hmm. And Stuart Webber himself made the point about Tim Krul as a real culture setter last season. And I can remember when they asked him about like who's been the best signing, and you looked at this list of recruitment and you're like, oh my goodness, it's like great players for peanuts. So many of them. And he was like, yeah, Tim Krul. And everyone was like, what? And it was because Tim Krul, he felt, was the guy that set the culture. He set the benchmark. And he had the Premier League experience as well, remember?
Yeah.
And I think all of those sort of factors were very, very important as well. The club was playing in the Championship, but it was playing with a Premier League style and with the belief that it was a Premier League club. And there's just so many fairy tale moments. That Vrancic free kick against Sheffield Wednesday I watched again the other day. Just the game against Millwall. I can just remember looking at my mate Ben, and I was like, not you, another Ben, Ben Mounser. And I was just like, is this actually happening? You know what I mean? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I had like so many good memories from last season, and kinda quite good to console ourselves with them at this point when things are a bit fraught.
It's a bit of a drug, isn't it, last season? I want to get your opinion on something quickly in regards to on the pitch, because you said something clicked, which I agree with. It definitely did. I mean, it's there to see, given the fact we won the league after finishing 14th, something definitely clicked. Do you think, because there's this whole debate, within the debate that Farke's had 2 out of 3 poor seasons with Norwich City, do you think the progression from 17-18 to 18-19, do you think that can be combined into one sort of decent season? Do you think the title-winning season cancels out the poorness of the 17-18?
Yeah, I absolutely think it does. It was a transition season. It was a transition season for the club as a whole. We were transitioning from paying bloated Premier League wages to players to a club that was sustainable with the aspiration of being a top 26 club. So sort of yo-yoing out of the Championship maybe, but not because we're doing the Aston Villa and get up and spending 100 million that we're going to regret just because we've got a rich owner. None of that. We're going to do it all ourselves. We're going to do it all organically. We're going to grow our own players in the academy. We're going to get players from abroad that we can sell on for bigger fees or create value in other ways. You think of Mario Vrancic, for example. Yeah, we might not sell him on for a big fee, but the value that Norwich City, even though he's not played as much this season, the value he got in terms of points he picked up for Norwich City last season, the fact he's not in that expensive a contract, and we picked him up for, what was it, 700k or something?
650, I read.
650. So there you go. And that is an example of value in another way. So it's not we brought him from the academy and we've sold him for 30 million kind of value. It's value in terms of what he's brought, in terms of the number of games and that sort of thing. And that is where I feel that, I think you've got to look at that first Championship stint holistically. I don't think you can say it's two out of 3 bad seasons. I think that's a very, very arbitrary way to look at it. I think you've got to look at the first one as a kind of free hit transition season where some things went right, some things went wrong. I was really worried going into the next campaign because of that over-reliance on James Maddison.
Yeah.
But I think taking him away, that almost let the rest of the players sort of flower, like players who were maybe sort of curbing their creative freedom a wee bit, were allowed to express themselves a bit more. Yeah, Stiepermann's is the perfect example. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's where a lot of the people that are on the sort of, because I know it's a growing brigade of sort of Farke out, but this is a difficult period for Daniel Farke right now. This is the hardest period of his Norwich City sort of managerial career. There's been bits before, like we said, the start of the second season and the first season there were loads of doubters. But I remember we were leaking goals, and there was then that period where we went through the five games where we didn't concede 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 0-0, 0-0, and whatever order that was in. But we won games that way, and it was like, yeah, okay, so he's identified a problem and he's found a solution. Now it's a case of trying to combine the different aspects of that. So I think where we judge Daniel Farke in terms of moving forward is the start of next season. I think he gets to the start of next season. I think he will anyway. I think regardless of what we think, what we decide in this podcast, Stuart Webber's not going to sack it. That's not going to happen before the start of next season. And he'll get a good period next season to try and bring it together. But I don't think he'll get as much patience as he did in his first season in charge. That I will say.
I do agree with that, because you look at sort of the title-winning season and the season before that, there was no expectation, was there, from Daniel Farke? He didn't come in with any pressure on his shoulders. However, after you win the title, with the fans specifically, because we've both had the pleasure of meeting Stuart Webber, we know how much faith he puts into Daniel Farke. We know how highly he regards him. Mm-hmm. Since winning the title, there is a little bit of expectation from the fans. Now, the key phrase from Stuart Webber is to ignore the noise, isn't it? And that could include the fans, which it sounds a bit harsh, but at the same time, you've got to have someone with a stiff chest and someone who's willing to puff it out and go, right, I'm going to do it my way. I won't be impacted from external factors, whatever they may be, the fans being one. But I do have a quick question for you, because I think we've finished on the 17, 18, 18, 19 beautifully. We've got all the points across that I intended to. I've got a question for you, which is about the unique bond created between Daniel Farke and the fans, which is, when did that start? Because I genuinely don't know. I spent about half an hour today trying to remember where that started, but as far as I remember, one game, Daniel Farke just started going like that, and everyone started joining in, and I genuinely can't remember when that was. Do you know?
Well, I seem to remember it being around the turn of the year.
Was it an away day thing? I feel like it maybe started in an away day.
Yeah, it started in an away day somewhere. There's actually, I'll tell you what, for anyone that's commenting on any of the platforms that this podcast's getting put out on, work that out for us, and then we'll try and, I'm going to try and dig out a clip on social media for the very first of the. What do you call it? The Farke best one was at Spurs, by the way, this season. That was my personal favourite.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what? I filmed that as well, and I was like, when I was filming it, I was like, I wish I could just enjoy it, but I think if I film it sort of candidly, it's there for a lifetime, isn't it? And my God, what a video that was! Although you do hear my horrendous squeaky as I was screaming out loud, but that was brilliant. So what we'll do now, right, is we'll move to a very different point in Daniel Farke's career, which is, as I said, where there was a bit of expectation. I say a bit, there was quite a lot of expectation from Norwich fans. From national media, there was none. It was very much, right, Norwich are probably going to go down because they spent $750,000 in total. So that created very little...
Sam McCallum's not included in that.
Well, in summer,
McCallum, but in terms of players that we have available now, yes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's your outgoings.
Well, exactly, and that created little expectation from the national media, which I enjoyed personally. Did you enjoy that? Because it was like everyone's against us, and that played in our favour so well last season. So why shouldn't it this season?
That's not the way I took it. I actually thought it was quite patronising, and that was maybe my misguidedness, because the one thing I thought when Norwich City came into this division this season, I thought we might go down. But I thought we were going to be a team that scored a lot of goals. I thought we were going to be probably quite porous defensively. Yeah. But I thought we were going to score a lot of goals. Then, all our defenders just got injured all at once. Yeah. And on my own podcast, I asked Stuart Webber about that. I said, in hindsight, do you regret not bringing in another centre half? And I said, He said, in hindsight, yeah, but I said, like, what about just bringing another sort of Premier League quality? And he actually argued with me that Norwich City's defenders as we have them now are all Premier League quality defenders. Maybe not high-end, all of them, but all Premier League quality. One of the points that I've found as one of the real positives this season is Grant Hanley, who I think has been brilliant when he's played. But I think overall it's just a case of trying to look at it and say, right, where do we kind of go from this point? Because this is, as I think you point out, the toughest period that he's going to have, because there's going to be players in that Norwich City squad that are going to think, right, we're Premier League players. We believe we belong at that level. There's also Charlie Wyatt's story in The Sun, which was the fact that players are going to lose half their pay. And I can confirm that is accurate. That is a true reflection of the way the Norwich City contracts are constructed.
Yeah.
So I think the players knew that they were going to have to lift it this season at the start of the season. I thought we were going to score goals. I thought we were going to be a team that was going to compete in this division and be like the Man City game. I thought there was going to be more of that.
Yeah.
And I think so many things conspired against us. I mean, I know it's really easy to say and make excuses and that kind of thing. And I think even if you take all of the excuses away, I think we maybe still go down in 18th or something.
Yeah.
But defenders, massive problem, right? That was totally against us from the get-go. Then you can make the argument, however, what about January then? Why not add a defender? And I think the Amadou experiment, football's a funny thing. Amadou played brilliantly against Arsenal, right? And I thought, we've got a player here. Yeah. Then we went to Southampton. I was at the game at St Mary's, and he had a stinker, was hooked. And then after that, it became right. But then Alex Tettey re-emerged, and I love the renaissance of Alex Tettey that always happens when we come up to the Premier League. People think he's finished, and then
he just comes out, becomes Ruud Gullit.
Yeah, Phoenix rises from the ashes.
Yeah.
I think Ruud Gullit would be offended given his level of technical prowess if you compared him to Alex Tettey, but I love that comparison.
Aim high.
Indeed. And that's what Norwich City were doing, ironically, at the start of the season. We were aiming high. We thought, let's go out, let's have a go at it. Yeah. We can maybe do something here. I think the disappointment came with, and I mean, the VAR thing against Spurs, like, so many things where it was just like, it seemed that the luck was very much against us.
Yeah.
But there then came a point when you can't say the fight went, because I think we have tried to fight the whole way, but we just stopped being able to create. We stopped being able to break teams down. We started playing in such a way where we became quite an easy team to play against, because what happened is teams would sit off us, and then as soon as we got into their half, they would press us quickly, and then we would either pass it back or pass it out of play, and we just couldn't handle that. I think Norwich City have been at their best this season when they've enabled the counter-attack. So when we've sat with that structure where we've maybe got, it's maybe a bit more of a 4-1-4-1 or 4-3-3, whatever way you want to look at it with the sitter, and then what that does is it frees us up to spring teams on the break. And Timu Puki's in a bit of a goals drought, but that's not all his fault. You think of, I can't even remember, it was a few games ago, Todd Cantwell's running through, Timu Puki's screaming for the ball in the right channel, doesn't play the pass, move comes to an end, and Timu Puki would probably have buried that, and then maybe you've got Timu who's sort of sharp again and sort of like maybe more able to take chances and get in positions in the running. But I think what the media expected at the start of the season is exactly like what the national kind of take on Norwich City was going to be. We have been exactly that. We have been the bottom feeders in the Premier League this season. We've been the worst team in the league. We'll finish with our worst ever points total. Like, I think if that's not confirmed, it's just about confirmed that we're going to get our worst ever points total, probably the worst ever goals total.
Yeah.
Like, there's loads of things that you look at and you're like, sheesh, this has been bad. And it doesn't matter that you've tried to do it on the cheap. There's been times that it's not been good enough. It's not been good enough even for trying to be done on the cheap in a league which is all about, I mean, just for context, Ismaila Sarr was like 35 million quid in his own. You could buy Norwich City squad twice for that, you know? So, I mean, what we're trying to compete against has to be contextualised. At the same time, Norwich City have been massively disappointing.
Yeah, I think the month of December sums that point up brilliantly, which is the first half of games was decent. First bit of the season was decent, and we set
You run
ourselves
us
up.
through what games those were, because like football's that's long ago now, like with the COVID stuff.
Do you know what it is? It is mad, isn't it? So that was like Spurs at home, Palace,
Yep.
Wolves, Sheffield United, Arsenal as well. All games that we took the lead in, and you compare that to the beginning of the season, which is we set ourselves up for success. Although arguably the injuries play against that, and then the second half there was just nothing, and we rolled over in a very timid fashion, which is it's a good metaphor. It's a bit depressing to say out loud, but it is a nice metaphor. I want to get your opinion on something that I talked about on the Revere End podcast with Alfie and Billy.
I'm going on there soon. They are good lads, man.
They really are. We had a great discussion on there, and one of my main points that I was proud of were about the transfers. Right now, the transfers are such an interesting thing to talk about, aren't they? I'm going to talk about the summer specifically because in the winter it was only Rupp and Duda, wasn't it, who were available to us at the time. So you look at players like Patrick Roberts, Ralph Fairman, Amadou. We won't look at Sam Byram because he's been quite decent. What do you put their unsuccess or whatever? What do you put their poor spell at Norwich down to? Because there's the option for them just being a poor signing. There's the option for attitude. There's the option for Daniel Farke not integrating them into the squad. What did you make of the signings? Where did it go wrong?
Right. Patrick Roberts, I thought was going to come in. Sorry, I keep referencing things that I've written and spoken about, but it's all there in the ether. Most of them I'm quite proud of. The Ingo Prowse stuff about Daniel Farke, yeah, really proud of that. Go read it. I was bang on. Right, this is one where I got it badly wrong.
Yeah.
I thought Patrick Roberts was going to come in and give a real impact for Norwich City, because if you look at any of our attacking players, Stiepermann tends to play centrally.
Yeah.
Now that we've worked out what he is. I couldn't work out what he was for a while. You talked about that transition season before. I remember saying in one of the things I was on, like, I think it was the Pinkin Pod, what is Marco Stiepermann? Because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what is it? Is it a left back? Is it a centre mid? Is it a what? Then he started playing the 10 and I was like, and
he started doing it really well.
That's what he is.
Yeah.
And I've kind of reached a new level of understanding again in what Marco Stiepermann is the other night, actually, because I realise this is deviating a wee bit for your question, but I think it's an important point to make. He's almost like a number 10 target man.
Absolutely.
So that's what he's like. You go put it up to him and it sticks, and then everybody moves about. He either switches it out to Aaron's, making an overlap, or
he just gives Norwich that option, doesn't he, to just go long where we can't get out the back, which has been our problem.
Exactly, because Pookie's small. Right, and Pookie's good at playing on the shoulder, really good at it, really intelligent, clever movement, right? But if you've got the big beanpole, the big statue up there that you can launch the ball at and you can make it stick sometimes, then that frees up Pookie, it frees up Buendia, it frees up whoever's in the wide positions to do their stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's no surprise Emi Buendia got his first goal of the season once he was restored to the lineup.
Yeah.
But in terms of the summer recruitment, Patrick Roberts, if you look at any of Norwich City players other than Stiepermann, none of them are left-footed. None of them are. So I thought Patrick Roberts' best position is on the right, cutting in onto his left foot, sort of inside forward kind of role.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to offer a different option. So if you look at what Todd can do, if you look at what Emi can do, if you look at what any of them can do, it's they all tend to sort of focus on the right. On L, even though he plays on the left, he's right-footed, likes to cut in eventually.
Yeah.
Usually 2 or 3 times into traffic after he's beaten 3 men.
Yeah.
But if you look at Patrick Roberts, I thought he was going to offer just a different option. But I know from quite early on, Norwich City saw that he just wasn't going to be up to it. And I think it might have been in terms of his physical aptitude.
So was that from training, do you think, or was that from the 20 minutes?
I think it must have been, because there was one, was it against Fulham or Luton? We played a friendly at in pre-season. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been Luton or Fulham, one of those two.
No idea.
And he looked really good. Like, he was doing all the things that I expected him to do. And I was like, oh, good. I'll look forward to him getting a chance to have a swing at that in the Premier League. And Patrick Roberts is a player who's been very highly rated for a young age. He broke into Fulham's team when he was young. Man City picked him up to make sure they met their homegrown quota. Plus, Man City just hoover up every player in the world anyway.
They do, yeah.
Modicum of talent. And yeah, like, I thought he was going to offer just a different option. But they decided quite early on that it just wasn't going to work with him. Mm-hmm. Sam Byram, as you say, by the way, a big advocate of him. I'm really, really pleased. I just hope he's been quite injury prone in his career, and I just hope he gets over it. other names you mentioned. Furman, Ralph Furman, I first saw playing for Schalke against Man City in the Champions League, right?
Yeah.
You'll probably go back to Schalke next season and be in with a chance of being number one. And they're no mugs in Germany. They're a big, big team.
Yeah.
Bigger football club than Norwich City. Schalke,
yeah.
Right? Furman came in, and Stuart Webber on my podcast argued that he's been a success because what he's done is he's forced Tim Krul to raise his game again. Tim Krul, even despite the Cruyff turn failure against Arsenal, he's Dutch, but still, man.
No, you can tell how much he's improved because we're letting him off for that, which is
exactly. Yeah. And he's going to be player of the season. I don't
absolutely.
I don't see anyone coming close in that. And Tim, I can buy into Stuart Webber's assertion about Tim sort of lifting his game because of Farman, and he thinks he would probably argue that signing was a success for that reason.
Absolutely.
At least that was the point he put across. And because it's a goalkeeper, I can kind of be tempted to go along with that. Amadou, sometimes with football players, it's just situations. So I'll give you an example from Scotland. Yeah. Rangers signed a guy called Umar Sadiq from Roma. And he played. There was only one game I know he played for Rangers. Supposedly he was awful in training.
Yeah.
Played against Aberdeen in a cup game, got put through 1-on-1, and just totally sort of nosebleeded it. And that was the moment that just epitomised his Rangers career. He was shipped out on loan. He's now worth 15 or 20 million euros, banging the goals in Eastern Europe. And you look at that, and it's just times and situations. Sometimes it just doesn't work out for a player. And I think that's what happened with Amadou.
Yeah.
And he played most of his games for Norwich City at centre-back, and that's not his position. Mm-hmm. So you've got to kind of feel for him. I kind of think that was just one that it was just the way it sort of worked out.
Yeah.
But overall, I think the summer recruitment, you can kind of go, right, fair enough. January's a different matter.
Mm-hmm.
January, I think the alarm bells were there. I didn't think we were going to go out and splurge money we didn't have. But I think the areas of the team that we improved, I think we needed a defender.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was addressed, regardless of whether people were returning to fitness or not. I think, either, unless you think an academy body is ready, I think you bring in a defender, just personally. In midfield, it's not worked. Lucas Roop looks like he'll be okay as a shuttler if there's a sitting midfielder sitting as one of the two. That's the one thing that he can do. When he was brought in, I was led to believe that he was this kind of versatile operator that could play pretty much in either wing, definitely in the right, and through the middle of the park quite comfortably, fulfilling a number of roles. He's had half a good game, maybe 3/4 of a good game from Norwich City, and it's just not been good enough. And Duda can play. I've seen Duda play and do good things in the Bundesliga. And the Bundesliga is probably, that and La Liga are second to the Premier League in terms of, you could make an argument for each.
Yeah.
But, it's just not worked. And I think we should have gone back to what was familiar long before now.
I think it's a tough one, isn't it? I just don't think Duda fits here because, as you said, what's familiar is Marco Stiepermann being the big man, the big technical lamppost who brings the ball down, allows others to come into the game. With Duda, you lose that, and arguably that's why. Well, no, exactly. That's why Norwich didn't have much success with James Maddison. Maddison had success. Let's not get that wrong. But Norwich then went to Marco Stiepermann and had loads of success. You see all these other players being brought into the game all of a sudden. And I know Maddison was fantastic, but genuinely, I think maybe if we had Maddison last season, he might not have done as well in the team, not as an individual, as Marco
I get
Stiepermann
that.
did.
And no, I totally agree. Norwich City maybe don't win this. People won't get this, but I know what I mean, and I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You keep James Maddison, Norwich City maybe don't win the title.
Yeah.
It's still all about James Maddison.
No, that's
right?
exactly what I think.
And see with that same methodology, right? If you put Marco Stiepermann in there, he's a player that, as we've talked about, how he can hold the ball up, but it's not just that; it's what happens round about that.
Yeah.
And he frees up space. Right, if you play 3 strikers, right, like Daniel Farke did, what was the game he threw 3 strikers on?
That was
recently?
Brighton, wasn't it?
Brighton.
Yeah.
So, and they're just filling the same spaces. And
Pukki was having to go out right, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. He's been forced to drift, right, when he's obviously better operating centrally. Same thing applies with Stiepermann in a different area of the pitch. If you've got him as the central focal point, then that means Pukki can drop in and out and all around about. The wingers can cut inside and outside. It creates space for the overlap. There's loads of different things can happen around about that. Andre Duda, again, was brought in as a different kind of option. But the option that he was brought in as was a technician. And if you look at his set pieces, they've been absolutely dreadful.
Terrible.
So that's the thing. If you're going to be brought in to fulfill a role, you've got to perform to the best of the attributes that you do have, especially in a team like Norwich City, where we need 9 or 10 players having a good game and a few of the opposition having a stinker to really have a chance of getting points in this league.
So that's a big difference between this and last season, wasn't it? The main thing that I pointed out in terms of a difference between Norwich this season and last season is the high press, where in the Championship we had players who were at the top level of that league, weren't they? So they could play through it. Whereas in the Premier League you can't do that because you lose the ball against Arsenal.
You say that, but we did it against Man City.
Do you know what we did? Which leads me to a question, which is: do you think the early form was a fluke for Norwich? Because 13 injuries was Man City was the peak, was the peak of the injuries, wasn't it? 13 senior players were injured, which is just mad to say. Norwich went and won that game, dare I say, comfortably, but in a very wonderful fashion, something that was pleasing on the eye. It wasn't like
we
Norwich
deserved it.
Well, no, exactly. We went backs against the wall.
We deserved to win that game of football.
No, exactly.
And we won it playing a style that. I think the style of football we play is more suited to playing against the better teams. The only problem is the better teams have a lot more quality than the other teams.
Absolutely.
If you put us up against a Burnley, right, they're just going to tightly mark us out a game.
Bully you.
Right? The physicality is there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Sheffield United, they've spent more money than Norwich City, but a lot of their best play has come from the players that came up with them. Mm-hmm. And what they've done is, they have got the physicality to adapt to it, and they play a style that kind of makes it easier for them. We're trying to play a style of football that, if we had better players, would elevate us above these teams, right? Maybe not in terms of points, but like in terms of the style that we were playing, it would be more of a modernistic style of football. Yeah. It wouldn't be because all of these other ways of playing have a ceiling, right? One of the teams that don't hit that ceiling are your Wolves, are your Leicester. They're teams that play that style of football, but they also have quality players that can execute that style.
Yeah.
Now, what we're trying to do is we're playing that way, but we don't have the players to even reach. It's a harder way to play. So what you've got to do is you've got to have players that do that. In terms of it being a fluke, I don't think it was. I think it was a combination of a few things. I think Pukki was still scoring and started off like house on fire. That volley against Newcastle, man, what a goal. I cling to moments this season.
That was right in front of me as well. Beautiful view of that.
Would be, aye. I think that, so like Pukki starting off really well. Momentum, a big thing. Confidence is still there. It's not shot to pieces yet. There seemed to be the right balance of, even though there were a few injuries and that kind of thing, like everyone was still, it wasn't this like, will this team work? Does he work here? It was like we were still playing players in roles that, even though Amadou, for example, was covering at centre back in that game, it was a role that we knew that he could just about do, you know? And everyone was in roles that they could do. Whereas I think after January, what's happened is it's become a puzzle. And it's been a puzzle that Daniel Farke has kept trying to work out. And eventually we found that none of the new pieces of the jigsaw are any better than what there was before. And so I don't think it was so much a fluke at the start of the season. I think it was that combination of factors that went well. But that game at Southampton that I went to, for me, I think that was the one where the confidence just went.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Newcastle in the Alex Neil season.
Yeah.
But for different reasons, because what actually happened is I think Alex Neil's bottle went after that. He started playing in a more pragmatic fashion. I don't think Norwich City did. I think it was just collectively, I think the application was there, but it's like, do we belong in this league when we have been done over by like a middling team? And Southampton at that point, I think, they were near the relegation zone, if not in it, at that point. Like they went on an incredible run to lift themselves away from it.
Yeah.
But I always thought Norwich City had a run in them this season, and we never did it. And that's the big disappointment.
Yeah, do you know what? That was put beautifully. And from this podcast so far, I've got probably 3 or 4 more points I want to go through before we wrap up. But from this podcast so far, what I'm gauging is that we think Daniel Farke is tactically apt, which is important to remember. We've seen the progression of Daniel Farke as a tactical coach. We've seen his man management is decent. We'll get onto that a bit more because it became a bit more relevant in the Premier League season again, didn't it, as opposed to last season in terms of Buendia. And I do want to compare Oliveira and Buendia in the treatment and how the players went in 2 very different directions at Norwich, didn't they? But also, I want to get your views on the Plan B substitution scenario, because it's one that really grinds my gears, Hodge. I won't lie to you, because in the substitutions for me, people have always said I might have said this before on this channel, but I'm changing my mind now. People have always said that Daniel Farke has never had a Plan B, which bothers me quite a lot, to be honest with you, because you look at last season, the games that we won and picked up points from. Let me just whip the notes out quickly. Games like Nottingham Forest, the draw, West Brom away, where Rhodes has finished that free kick beautifully, Bolton at home, Millwall at home as well, and there's many more that I can't remember off the top of my head. But what are your views on it? Because there's a whole variety of reasons he might not have a Plan B this season. Do you put it down to him being stubborn, lack of a transfer budget to go and bring in players to bring off the bench? Because realistically, we've not got someone, or not got anyone on the bench who is Premier League quality to bring on.
I think a lot is made of it. And by the way, see, just before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty answer in this question, let me throw one back at you.
Yeah.
One of the signings we didn't talk about was Josip Drmic. Where do you sit on him?
Do you know what? Right, where I am, you can tell I'm a Norwich fan in terms of the fact that right now I'm not his biggest fan. However, had Adam Eder scored against Watford from his beautifully flicked on header, maybe that opinion would be changing. But before lockdown, I was thinking he is a contender. Not really a contender, but a perfect second choice striker, because he's very different to Pukki, isn't he, in terms of the fact he's a bit more rugged. You don't look at him for his technical ability, you look at him to get in defenders' faces, which is how he scored that goal against Villa, although I don't really want to bring that game up in too much fashion, because he came in, he was at a Pukki, wasn't he? He came in for free, had a little bit of a reputation. I think he just missed a penalty against England, so he fit the bill perfectly at Norwich. But right now I'm not his biggest fan. I don't know what you think.
I don't think he's shown Norwich City the player he is yet, but I think there's been flashes. I think against Spurs in that cup game he made a massive difference. Yeah. I think you mentioned that flick on. Things like that. There was a chance for Buendia where he screwed it wide. I keep forgetting, I've quickly consigned to memory who we've been playing in these post-lockdown games.
It's all one long game.
Something, though? Do you know something? See the fans not being there? It makes me hard to remember who the team we were playing is. I don't know if that's just a weird thing with someone else, but there was one of the games where he was out in the right channel and he kind of jinked inside, and Amy Buendia had a chance to shoot and screwed it wide, right? Never really tested the keeper. But he's shown flashes of ability that make me think this is one hell of a player once we find out how to make the best of him.
Yeah.
I think Josip Drmic is really, really talented, and I think if he sticks around and long enough, which I'm not sure what the situation is, but I think he's one that will maybe think he belongs at a higher level than the Championship. That said, he's done nothing to prove that he belongs at Premier League level yet. On the whole. But this is a player that has scored goals in the Bundesliga. This is a player that's got a good strike rate internationally. It's a player that when Stuart Webber was on my podcast, he's quoted directly saying has a bit of everything. Now, I trust, see, regardless of this season's recruitment, if you look at what he did last season turning water into wine, I trust Stuart Webber's opinion on a football player.
Yeah.
He knows a football player better than me or you or most fans.
A little bit, yeah.
Now, with that in mind, if he's saying that about this guy, that makes me think there's something there. And I've seen flashes of it. That near post flick on, it's just intelligent. A less intelligent player tries to kid into the near post and it's an easy save for the keeper.
It's instinctive, isn't it?
Aye, he knows, he's aware of what's behind him and knows to get it on, and it's Eder that gets it actually totally wrong. I think maybe over exuberance chance of a first Premier League goal,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a player there in Drmic, and I think he kind of sums up. You can remind us of what your exact question was, because I brought him up for a reason.
But my question was about Plan B. There you go.
Aye, no, that's fine. So, I think Joseph Durmich totally sums that up.
Oh, absolutely.
In the sense that Norwich City, when they brought him in, I speak to Stuart on occasion, and he said he's there to give us a different option. He's there to give us the option when sort of Pookie's not working, like to give us something a bit different. And he does do that if he's playing well. But I don't think he's ever really been fit or fully sharp for Norwich City. But that brings in another question, which is like Project Restart. Why have we looked so off it when there was a preparation period? Yeah, Stiepermann had coronavirus, right? Fair enough. You can kind of write him off from that discussion, right? But this is an unprecedented thing. Nobody's ever had to do it. I mean, like since the war, there's not been a stoppage like this in football, right?
Yeah.
So you can't say like, oh well, like how could they not be ready, you know? But I just feel that, like, especially with such an emphasis on fitness being put on in Daniel Farke's first season, I just don't understand how we came into it so off it. And I think Josip Durmich is a big part of the plan B that we could have had for the Premier League. In the Championship season, I think you're right to a point. I think there were loads of substitutions and stuff like that. But I kind of just felt like we were always doing plan A better.
Yeah.
Or we had fresh legs executing plan A. I don't think we ever really did go long. And I remember the fourth goal against Millwall being the perfect example. And like it was just we were passing through the areas and we got it into space. And I'm just thinking that this is Barcelona. Like this is, you know what I mean? That this is what Barcelona would do chasing a game.
Yeah.
Or Man City or one of these great teams. And it just felt so special to be chasing a game but not doing it desperately.
Yeah.
I think we had the pragmatism and sense to know in the Premier League that wasn't going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Durmich hasn't been available all the time, which has probably impacted that plan B. But ironically, since Project Restart, I think the problem's been too many other plans. I think it's been plan B, plan C, plan D, and I don't think we've actually stuck to plan A. And I think that's where it's gone wrong since the restart.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost like two opposite things have been the problem at different times.
Do you think Daniel Farke panicked a bit? Because do you know what? You make a really, really good point about how since Project Restart has sort of started, there's not been one real way. You look at last season, as you mentioned, there was no plan B, I suppose. It was very much, let's ramp up plan A, let's keep our composure, but do it a bit quicker, which is what happened. So do you think maybe Daniel Farke has panicked a bit, been a bit too reactive? Or does it just sort of show as an experience?
Maybe. He never looks flustered. And again, that's something you've got to remember, right? Mm-hmm. This was a guy that was taking a jump when Norwich City were in the Championship. And he eventually found his level in that league. The Premier League is a lot more unforgiving.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have accused him of being too wedded to plan A, too wedded to certain players in the past. And now that he's actually trying to change it, he's getting criticised for doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So he can't win.
He can't.
He's in a position where he's getting criticised whatever he's doing, and that's the nature of football. Losing games and no scoring goals, that's what's going to happen. But I think the thing for me is, I think he's learning. And I think he's at the toughest point of his managerial career right now. Because, to be honest, it's been an upward trajectory up until now.
Yeah.
He's now at a point where he's going to have to deal with... I don't think the dressing room will fracture because I think it's a well-constructed dressing room personalities-wise.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that a lot of fans don't get. Yeah, we could spend all this money on a player. But what they've got to do is they've got to come in and they've got to then deliver, right? And if you've got someone that's on like loads more wages than someone else, it's like it creates that rivalry, right? Norwich City don't have any of that. They've got good personalities in the dressing room. There's no bad apples. We've talked about Nelson Oliveira. He was consigned to history, right? We got rid of Johnny Howson, I remember, right? Yeah. And I was like, Johnny Howson's the best player I've ever seen in the Norwich City shirt. I loved the guy, right? Commentating so many brilliant goals that he scored, right?
That famous one against Nottingham Forest. Absolutely love that commentary.
Oh, well, I don't know if the club do. They took it off last time they put it out in their highlights feed.
Oh, that's the beauty of it though, isn't it?
I loved it, man. That's one of the best goals. I remember I got interviewed outside the game after it with Darren Eady and Michael, and he's like that. oh yeah, Johnny Howson's goal. I was like, goal fit to grace any arena. And it is, mate. You see that goal in the Champions League final, you're like, what a hit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we sold Johnny Howson. Yeah, we got rid of him because the club thought that in terms of the direction that we were hoping to go, he wasn't going to fit the picture moving forward. And I was like, well, that's a massive mistake. Right?
Yeah.
And then obviously we had that indifferent first season that we've covered in quite a lot of detail. Now we're in the situation where Daniel Farke has choppy waters. And Stuart Webber, by the way, is under a bit of pressure himself because he's been much criticised for his recruitment. I think he'll still back himself. I don't think he'll panic. I think he will very much ignore the noise, as you say. And that will apply to Daniel Farke as well. Daniel Farke will get time at the start of next season. So our overall debate here of should Daniel Farke be sacked? No, I don't think he should. And no, I know he won't. But that said, this is the time that Daniel Farke needs to take a look at it and go, right, I have to be very careful about how I move forward here.
Yeah.
And in terms of the dressing room this summer, it's going to be reconstructed. There's going to be a bit of change. But they're also going to have to come out the blocks fairly quickly this next season. And if you look at every one of Norwich City's campaigns under Daniel Farke, that has not happened. Even the title-winning campaign, we were slow starters.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, you can argue it sort of did this season because that's where we had our success.
Probably the best one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, in terms of how we started. And that's kind of what makes the situation now all the more demoralising.
Yeah.
But that's where next season's going to be tough. Because there's not going to be time to sort of lick our wounds and go, all right, yeah, we're going to stabilise. Don't get me wrong, I think the playoffs is fine next season because it's going to be another transitional season and we don't know how many bodies we're going to lose. And I don't think people were expecting us to go, yeah, right, we might bank. Let's say we bank 100 million quid. That was one of the questions I asked Webber in my pod. I was like, what happens if we make 100 million quid? Do we spend that? How do you decide if we spend 20 million in one player? Then he started talking about the concept of value and how you create value and that kind of thing. And that's where fans need to be sensible. There's rumours going about a guy, Dennis Mann, at the moment, the Steaua Bucharest fella, right,
yeah.
who's one of the sort of top wonder kids and all the lists and stuff like that. That might be an example where Norwich City do spend.
Is it 8 million? Because do you know what I got? I was told about Dennis Mann. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Someone said he might be joining. I was like, all right, okay. So I look into this. I looked at Twitter of all the places to look, and I saw £8 million. Is that a thing?
Listen, I don't know enough about any of the contractual situation there. He might have a lot of these players, highly touted sort of youngsters abroad, have clauses written in that clubs for big leagues can buy them for a certain figure. I don't know. There's Emanuele Rossu is probably if you're looking for a Romanian journalist who's in the know about things. I think it was him that's broken this story.
Okay.
Obviously, no journalist ever reveals their sources for something like that.
Yeah.
But I think what I would say about that is I think those noises seem to be backed up by a few corroborating sources. And there's some very interesting rumours going around about Norwich City. But what I was going to say is, I don't think we're going to spend just like 5 million here and 10 million there. It's not going to be that. We might spend £1 million in a guy that turns out to be brilliant. We might spend 8 million quid or whatever it might be in Dennis Mann, and he might not work, you know? But I think if we are going to spend money, I back it to be spent well.
Oh, of course.
But the key thing is Daniel Farke needs to work out, and he is tactically flexible, he's tactically adept, as you say, but he needs to work out fairly quickly at the start of next season who works where and how it works with sort of people in different places. Mm-hmm. And he also needs to make sure that the hunger's still there, because they've won that championship title and then they've come up to the Premier League and the bottom's collapsed out it quite catastrophically, to be honest. Yeah. So recreating that hunger, it's why, like, if you watch the basketball documentaries and stuff like The Last Dance, it's that hunger to win again that these great sports people have. Now, Norwich City have some great characters in that dressing room. We've got some tidy football players. Do we have players that want it enough again? Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge for Daniel Farke and the squad next season.